Okay, so we're going to answer what are doors and activities. Now, just so you know, I have personally sat in watching, studying, or teaching well over 20,000 ins and outs, or what they're called doors activities. So I have to do the math to actually know the number. It has been a lot, and it's been with about 23, 25 teachers or so that all have taught in the Meisner realm. So when I'm answering this question, I'm going to try and answer this for your benefit so that you can understand what to expect and what the reason is for the exercise. Now, when it first started, the exercise was called ins and outs. There was a person inside and there was a person outside of a door. And the ins and the outs, which later became renowned as the door and activity exercise. The person inside does an independent activity or an involved doing. So the person inside is involved in a doing, and the person outside is involved in a being, a state of being. They have a reason to come to the door at first, and there's levels. But every single basics of these exercises at every single level of the work, which I've seen every single level of the work from anybody who some people basically every single thing you can think of. People that are now famous doing the work, people that are not famous that have done the work, people that were famous and came into class to be able to work, to be able to try and get some spontaneity. I've been through it, and I've seen it with my own eyes. So the reason for this is an extremely, extremely clever exercise. And it was done with Sanford Meisner. And there is so many different variations to this exercise, but for the most part, the consistency is that there's somebody inside and there's somebody outside. Now, each student works at their own level, their own emotional level, their own level of difficulty of learning acting. So you've got one person inside involved in a doing. The independent activities I'll go over and explain later. But you get involved in those doings, and you have a person outside. The person outside initially only starts with a reason to come to the door or a purpose to come to the door, just to get themselves in so that the interaction can start. Now, there have been a lot of door slams. There have been a lot of fists through walls. Oh, there's been some. There have been a lot of scuffles. And that was even more common back in New York City than it is today. Although today, sometimes it can happen. And there's reasons why some of these things happen, which are fascinating studies, because it gets right into the whole thing with the human condition of how we end up. See, we have to learn that we're giving up ourselves to find ourselves in acting. So we have to let go of ourselves at least a little to be able to find the moments of realism and the moments of reality in acting. And that happens when there's all of this interaction happening between this exercise. So initially, the person at the door is just coming to the door for something simple. Initially, the person inside the door is doing the activity just for some simple reason. Now, the thing about reasons that always have bothered me, the reason is sometimes too logical. See, if you have a door, a person at the door, and they've come with a reason, and you have a person inside with a reason, and there's no flexibility about it, there's not going to be very much. Somebody has to get and move, and there has to be flexibility. There's the risk of playing the idea So after over 20,000 times watching this exercise, which has taken over 2 decades to achieve, and there's been, sometimes I've been not missing classes, and then I got injured because I was assaulted from someone in the industry, and anyway, the whole thing is interesting, and there's so much to say about it. So let's think about this for a second. There are incredible things to this exercise. This exercise, it amplifies almost a micro organism of what is human interaction. So you can look at it and you can literally study the interaction of the people in the exercises. And then you can work and study, and they can learn acting through learning to be able to learn how to balance their desires to do good in acting and their real, see, the real start of the work. There's basics beginning. You have to have a difficult activity. You have to have a reason to do the activity. You have to have an urgency to get it done. These are all components of the work. Now, I suggest, highly suggest that you put a motivation into doing the activity. You find something that motivates you, and then it will want to get done. You will want to get it done. If you work with just consequence, which you can also add, if you work only with the consequence, that's going to be this dreadful thing for you to go through. It's going to be a lot harder for you to want to get the activity done. Or it's going to be a lot harder to want to come to the door. But the crutch of this work starts to be able to get in depth when the emotional preparation starts to become flirted with by the students. Because they'll start to work with feeling. And the feeling of the exercises, well, it's a self-stimulation of emotional preparation. Now, I know people have all sorts of different ways of emotionally preparation. I know that. I get that. And you should know that too. And that's why I mention it. But the reality to this is we are all somewhat unique. All of us. So what you're looking for when you're doing this doors and activity exercise, you want to be able to look and really work with something that's personally fitting to you. So you really work from yourself. You want to be able to really work and be able to work with this. So the importance of being able to add motivation to your activity is a fantastic thing to achieve. Because you will literally probably lose track of time because you'll be motivated in order to get it done. So the next kind of description of this exercise is you've got somebody doing an independent activity and you've got somebody at the door. And the person at the door, when they've worked up to being able to get something simple, you pass something simple. So you've worked with emotional preparation. The person at the door will give themselves an emotional preparation. And this exercise works for really beginning students, all the way to the advanced. So the person at the door will work with their emotional preparation. And they'll start and they'll knock on the door. Now, if they need to do the exact same thing, they need to have a purpose, or they need to have a reason. They need to have, we try and hold back urgencies on the door. initially, because until you get to the advanced work, because sometimes you can really push your agenda. But you want to work with urgencies. You can work with consequence. All the different things that you can work with. And then you want to add motivation. Motivation to be at the place where you're coming to, which is part of the thing. So you give yourself a very small reason, which is almost like a storyline. And you give yourself a reason to want to come to the door so that you can get where you've come for. So you're coming for something that's tangible. Something that you have a tangibility about. Now, later on in the work, that tangibility will become maybe a little bit more etheric, but it will still be tangible. You'll still be able to measure whether or not you're able to get it. And that person knocks on the door. Now, this comes to a point in the work that's crucial. It's a crucial step. You get yourself a knock. Now, if you're doing your independent activity, which is what they call it, right? The independent activity. You got your doing, your work where you're doing. If you're really involved in the doing, it's going to surprise you. The knock, it will surprise you in a way that you won't expect it because you'll be so involved in the doing. Now that's an enormous element in acting. So basically, most students doing this activity through their entire career in whatever classes that they take might do between 150 to 250 doors and activities. Maybe, at the very most. And a lot of them do less. Far less. And so that is every single time you're doing a door and activity. Every single time that you've got the activity aspect of it. You want to work in a way that you're so involved in your activity that when there comes a knock, it startles you a little. And in that startlement of being interrupted, maybe you're not interrupted, but if you are, whatever's truthful, but at the same time, if you're really involved, you get to practice that involvement. And when that knock comes, however it works off of you, you identify it. Now you identify that moment off the knock. It might be entirely different than what's on the other side of that door. That knock might be exactly what it is. Or it might be something that's completely, absolutely, entirely different. So, you just go off of the moment of the knock. You identify the knock and you start the work by you open the door and you tell them what kind of knock it is. That knock was a stern knock. Then the person at the door, leaving everything at the door. They brought their baggage to the door. They brought their emotion to the door. All they do is repeat. They just repeat. And then the interaction starts. So you've got a point where this interaction starts. And now you've got a point in the work where the dance has started. Now you have two different things going on here. One, you have a person in a state of being with no agenda on the outside of the door that's now knocked on the door and is in the exercise because the door is opened. And you have a person that was very active in working in an independent activity, really working on doing an activity and getting it accomplished, who now catches themselves in a moment of complete not sure because they don't know, well, now they're in a situation where this what is unanticipated. So they have an unanticipated situation. Now, a lot of people, a lot of students at this point in the work, whether they're working with emotional preparation, not working with emotional preparation, whether it's simple, whether it's not, basically, they're in a situation where something in them starts wondering if they're doing the exercise correct. It's a it's a quagmire. It's a complete, the person that's inside doing the activity has now had something justified for them to go over to answer the door. And now they're involved in repetition with the person at the door. And they're in a quagmire. Now it's very easy to judge yourself at this moment and say, oh, you're not doing the exercise correct. But this is the exercise. The exercise is that involvement. The exercise is the surprise. Look, there's this old saying, if you love it, it will love you back. It's a great expression. And if you love it, it will love you back. If you've invested in your independent activity, it will call you back. If you haven't invested in it to want to get it done, and if you're not even working with motivation, then you're in a situation, or if you're only working with consequence, which is a penalty consequence that's trying to force you to be able to do something, it's going to be a lot harder to try and be motivated to be able to want to get it done, and it's going to be a lot harder for that independent activity to call you back into the work that's wanting you to pull there. But the thing is that you as the actor are caught in this quagmire. You're responding to the other person, but yet at the same time you have something that you need to do. And that's genuine. Now, most people that study Meisner, they might do between, I don't know, maybe 50 to 150, maybe 50 to 70 of these exercises, and then quit. And that might be, they might even advance throughout the work so that they're like going to quit somehow in the end of middle of the exercises, the middle of intermediate. And it depends on the school, and it depends on the program, and it depends on what it is. But that's typically what is a Meisner trained actor, where they'll end up doing about, let's say, 50 to 70 doors activities. And a lot of them, unfortunately, think that they've done the exercise incorrectly because they're in this quagmire and they can't quite understand. That is the essence of the exercise. That is the conflict within these exercises. It's the same with ins and outs back in New York in the 1950s. The ins and the outs exercises were just, it's the exact same thing. The doors and activities just got their name changed. So you've got the situation where you're not anticipating. So now all of a sudden your guard is completely down. You don't know what you're going to say next. You don't know what you're going to do next. You don't know what the other person's going to do next. And there's this thing that if you've done correctly, which is the weirdest thing in the world, that you've started to work on, building this little drawbridge or something out of wood and this cardboard thing, and you felt like it really needed to get done, and you had a motivation, and you've got this desire while you're at the door repeating with the other person to go back and get it done, and it's just bizarre. The whole thing's bizarre. The whole thing with the exercise is bizarre. And this is how we expand ourselves to be able to handle more conflict and be able to work through conflict and be able to train ourselves as actors. It's the most weirdest exercise, and it's the most powerful little exercise to work on. To work with the acting. Your spontaneity in every single regard is getting done. Now, if you do the work without these components in it, it's going to feel different. You're not going to be as alive. You won't be as spontaneous. You'll probably just go back and start doing something normal. Like, when I say normal, I mean, you'll just ignore the other person or do stuff that you might not work on in terms of your goal here is to be able to explore that conflict. So the repetition, as it's called. Now it's called the repetition. It used to be called the word game. The repetition continues to get repeated at the door. Now, if you're inside, you're getting all that conflict. Now, if you're outside, all you're doing, if you're on the being side of the work, all you are is you're working. Now, the anticipation, the excitement, the plethora of activity, it's completely stimulating. And it completely takes up all of your focus. So what's so bizarre about it is that you've got an independent activity that was taking up all of your focus, and now all of your focus has all of a sudden shifted to your partner and every single thing else that's included. And your goal here at this point is just to be honest and truthful. Whatever it looks like, it's just to be truthful. If you like the person, you like the person. If you don't, you don't. Whatever the case is. One thing I've always said, you want to be able to, in these doors and activities, you want to be able to identify what you're attracted to and what you're not attracted to. Something that you're drawn in by and something that you're not drawn in by. Because in some of those moments where you really have no idea what to do other than just live truthfully, you're going to be in a situation where you just don't know what the heck's going on. And this is the way that the work actually happens. And this is how strange acting is. And by doing these exercises, you're going to grow. Your spontaneity grows. Your ability to respond to everybody's growing. Everything's growing. So, to answer the question, what is a door and activity? That sums up a lot of it. And it's very, very, very important to understand that weird sensation and all of this overwhelming conflict that hits you is part of the exercise. That's how Sanford Meisner designed it to work. Or if not, at least he gets the credit because he really explored the exercises. And that's great. And he deserves a lot of credit. And the thing is that a lot of people think that there's only certain ways to do these exercises. But the older Sandy Meisner got, the more fluid he got with the work. The less strict. He got strict in a way, but there was more freedom for the actor. So take this in. Boop the like button. That's what it's called. Boop the like button. And it will help the algorithm or something. And the thing is that understanding that these were originally ins and outs. These exercises have been done for a long, long time. There are very few teachers that have ever seen 20,000 of these exercises. And I can tell you, I have seen more than I have to do the count. So working with this is something that is a gift to you. And if you want to judge the other actor, then you learn that lesson, but you probably don't. But if you do, then you'll work with that, and you'll work through that aspect. And if you have an opinion, of course you express it. All of those things are, it's this incredible tool for you to be able to work and just grow. But that essence of conflict was designed in the exercise to be able to have it work so that there was. Now, one last note here. When we talk about conflict, the reason why I'm talking about conflict is because there's been a lot of people punched, kicked, thrown in a wall, all kinds of violence in Meisner exercises. And every single person says, well, I was angry, I was justified, I could do it, I don't care. Well, that's fine. Maybe it's true. Maybe you were justified. But be careful with each other. Please, just be careful with each other. Don't try and kill each other in the exercises. And understand that the conflict is conflict that's interwoven. It doesn't have to be one person's trying to achieve one thing, the other person's trying to achieve another thing. That's innate in the exercise. You still work off, you still interweave each other. You still work with each other to be able to work that through. So don't judge a book by its cover. Really explore it. Understand that the work can take you in many different directions. And there's a very, very, very old saying. It's fantastic. And the old saying is run the gamut. So go run the gamut.